Today on the official Marvel podcast, we are joined by Marvel Television's Agatha All Along star Joe Locke to answer your burning questions surrounding episode 6.
The game's up. Lies over. The con, as Agatha would say.
We've also got Agatha All Along's executive producer and head writer Jack Schaefer on the show to share why she chose Joe Locke for the role of Teen.
He read with Catherine, and it was great. And then we moved to a dramatic scene, and it was like the molecules in the room shifted.
Not to mention, we've got a very special guest from the Kingdom of Latveria joining us for a breakdown on Dr. Doom.
And to round things out, we're chatting with Marvel Comics writer Joe Kelly about his upcoming storyline, 8 Deaths of Spider-Man.
Unfortunately, Spider-Man, he has very much gotten the notice of Doom. And you really don't want to get Doom's attention on any day.
I'm Preeti Chibber.
And I'm Evan Narcis.
And this is the official Marvel podcast. Agatha All Along's 6th episode reveals a lot about a particular protagonist that I am so excited that we finally get to speak about. But before we do that, we've got to run our spoiler warning.
Episode 6 answers many of our questions surrounding Joe Locke's character Teen, or should I say William Kaplan?
Billy Maximoff, the son of the Scarlet Witch. Here is the show's executive producer and head writer Jack Schaefer on how she wanted to approach telling Billy's story and his superhero origin.
Well, so in approaching Agatha, I really wanted to bring what was fun and what was successful about WandaVision into this series. And one of the things that I found really thrilling about WandaVision was the nonlinear structure and was the bottle episodes. In WandaVision, it's episode 4, where we break out of the sitcom and we do a rewind. We used to call that episode the rewind because we go back and we see how we got there. And then episode 8 in WandaVision is the same. It's Wanda's rewind. And so when we decided that we were going to bring Billy into the show, I wanted to give him his own episode in that way so that we could stop, rewind, and understand this very complex journey. And also, up until that point, he's been painted as a familiar, and he's kind of at times like infantilized and underestimated. And so in order to sort of feel that change, we needed to feel his whole story in episode 6.
Here's what Joe Locke had to say about celebrating his character's bar mitzvah on set for that episode.
The bar mitzvah stuff I always wanted to do with like the most like respect and in the most authentic way. And Jack Ganjo, our director, we worked with the rabbi who was the coolest. She was so cool and learned about like doing it with the most respect. And it was really great to get to explore that. And we did the party in the temple, like next door, next to the synagogue. So it was nice to like, I don't know, do it as the most authentic and with the perfect influences. I think sometimes when you're filming party scenes, it can really not feel like a party because you're dancing with no music. But yeah, it was really fun. It was a fun day.
The episode shows us how a fatefully timed car crash results in Billy Maximoff waking up in the body of William Kaplan. Joe Locke also shared his approach to playing this complex role.
It's like almost playing two characters. I think, luckily, like with the scenes before the car crash and post-car crash, it's almost like I saw it as like two different characters because they are technically. And which trying to explain to people is so difficult to like they're the same, but they're not the same. So it was nice to be able to play little differences, and it was also helpful to have like the bedroom is so different, and the script and the things that William and Billy say are so different in like personality, which is great. But it was fun to get to play that, and then also there's the extra layer of like Teen of the first 5 episodes is very different to Billy of episode 6 onwards. It's like the mask of this, I think, because we had a lot of discussions about whether the like fanboy energy of the first 5 episodes was all fake or whether it was like, but I never saw it as like, I think that still was a big part of him of like, he still was loving it and having like a great time, but it was then like the lifting of the mask almost, like post that "you're so much like your mother" line, which always gives me chills whenever I see it, hear it. And it's like when the mask, like the game's up, lies over, the con, as Agatha would say.
This episode also featured the return of WandaVision's Ralph Bohner, whose actual name is Randall, played by Evan Peters. Here's Joe Locke again on working with Evan Peters.
I mean, he's an amazing actor. It was great to get to work with him, and he was so funny because it like I think the key to what makes it so funny is him like taking it so seriously. Like in the character of Ralph is clearly like, it's so not funny to him, which is what makes it so hilarious. When he grabs the thing and starts shaking it, it was just funny, just great fun. It was a great day. I like was staying in this high-rise building when we got to Atlanta, and my car kept getting broken into. It happened twice in a week. And we filmed that scene in that parking lot of that building. I ended up moving out because I was like, I can't live. Some of my car just keeps getting broken into. But yeah, we filmed that scene in that car park. So it was quite funny to go full circle of like, which also meant that if I'd have stayed in that place, I could have just got the elevator down to get to work, which would have been nice.
And here's Jack Schaefer on what made Joe Locke the perfect person to tackle this complicated character and role.
When we initially were writing it, it was very kind of comedy forward. It was very much about the two-hander of Agatha and Teen and their sort of back and forth, and that he could be kind of like salty and biting with her and she back with him, and that there was sort of like delight in that sort of tussle between the two of them. But we knew it was going in a direction that would have an enormous amount of drama and darkness to it. And when Joe came to read, that was the thing. Like he came in, he read with Catherine, and we did a comedy scene first, and it was great, and they had great charisma, and he was so charming. And then we moved to a dramatic scene, and it was, I mean, like, I've said this before, it felt like the molecules in the room shifted. Like, he's a very animated, kind of fidgety person, but when it's time to act, like in a dramatic moment, he goes still in a way that you're pulled into him. And it was like, that's what we need for the son of the Scarlet Witch.
So, if you've been watching this show from the beginning, like we've all wondered and speculated about who this character is, and we can finally talk about it now. The first thing I'll say is like, Joe Locke is really good as William Kaplan, Billy Maximoff. I love the way Joe Locke is playing his character, kind of like a high school goth kid rolling with the adults and definitely giving like I'm sassing the substitute teacher kind of vibe. That's what I've gotten from Joe Locke's performance thus far.
Yeah, he is fantastic. And I am completely in awe that like really complicated origin was actually able to be captured on screen.
Yeah, it's funny. The comics where this character first appears are really intense and continuity heavy. And one of the jobs that these shows have to do is boil that down to keep it engaging and make it feel organic to the storylines that we're watching on screen. And I think they accomplished all of this. It's really, a fun corner of the Marvel Comics universe that's being brought over to the TV side.
Now, I'm told we have a very special guest all the way from Latveria up next to share the comic book history of Victor Von Doom, a.k.a. Dr. Doom. I don't want to keep His Royal Highness waiting, so I'll let them take it away.
Hello, weaker beings. I am Doombot A28. I am one of many identical copies of the great and powerful Dr. Doom. His superior intellect enabled him to create an army of us, robots with nearly approximate his superior strength, power, and mental fortitude. Very few are able to distinguish a Doombot from its maker. Even some telepaths are powerless against our advanced technology. It is a privilege to work in his stead, often to die in his stead, so he can continue his exceptional work. I have been tasked with chronicling the life of the incomparable Lord Doom. I shall try to do so without overloading my emotional subroutines with excessive veneration. Victor Von Doom was born to Romani parents in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress. Some records claimed she was killed by a Latverian soldier, while others say she died in an ill-fated deal with the demon Mephisto. Regardless of how the event occurred, it was the first of several undeserved tragedies our esteemed leader would experience. Not long after losing his mother, his father was driven to his death by the tyrannical leader of Latveria. In response, the tenacious young Victor became obsessed with studying science and magic, excelling in both, in the hopes of reuniting with his mother. As Victor grew, the Americans learned of the young Romani genius, and a U.S. military operative approached the boy with an offer. Victor would attend State University in New York City on a full-ride scholarship on the condition that the U.S. government would have access to his already staggering intellect and research. While attending college, Victor met the detestable Reed Richards, a man imbeciles and easily impressed simpletons would later call Mr. Fantastic. No matter how smart Richards believed himself to be, the two men did not see eye to eye on most things. In his ambition and wisdom, Victor began work on a machine that would project his astral form into a hell dimension so he could rescue his mother from Mephisto. Richards pointed out a flaw, as if such a thing was possible in Victor's calculations, though I doubt Richards knew anything about the inner workings of such a complicated invention. Victor is both a scientific genius and a master of the black arts. He would never, ever require the opinion of Reed Richards. Victor used the machine to successfully locate his mother, but he wasn't able to free her. His machine betrayed him and exploded for reasons unrelated to Richards' correction, I am sure, and Victor's face was irreparably scarred. In another turn of injustice, State University expelled Victor for his incredible success in designing such an ambitious machine. Small-minded plebeians. Victor gathered himself and traveled the world, settling in Tibet, where he studied with monks who helped him develop his signature armor. Once outfitted with his new suit and new name, Dr. Doom, he returned to Latveria. There, he overthrew the autocratic government which oppressed his people and became their beloved ruler, Lord Victor von Doom. Because Dr. Doom is such a benevolent leader, he set his sights on the altruistic objective of world domination. In his search for power, influence, and the release of his mother from hell, he has crossed paths with quite a few of your heroes. Reed Richards and the rest of the frivolous and weak-minded Fantastic Four have antagonized him for years. Dr. Doom also traded blows with the Black Panther when the African king selfishly refused to allow Doom to occupy the nation of Wakanda and pillage its vibranium. Could the short-sighted Black Panther not anticipate what philanthropic feats Doom would achieve with the spoils? Dr. Doom was even recognized as a hero when your frivolous American celebrity, Tony Stark, was in a coma. Doom donned the Iron Man armor and mantle when your world so desperately needed saving. In exchange, Lord Doom was audaciously accused of wielding Iron Man's power unethically. He was not corrupted by the power. He is the rightful judge of how power should be used. And don't forget to bow in gratitude for the times Lord Doom deigned to team up with your delusional costume grapplers. Dr. Doom joined Spider-Man and the android Vision in saving the Scarlet Witch from a time-traveling witch hunter. He helped the X-Men save the intangible mutant Kitty Pryde from dissipating completely when Reed Richards failed, of course. Doom was instrumental in defeating the cosmic being Dormammu, in concert with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And if that effort was in service of acquiring Dormammu's arcane power, it matters not. Who better to wield such power than our Lord Doom? After hearing this historical summary, you may feel as if you know Doom, but your feeble mind couldn't possibly comprehend the greatness of his power. And one day, when we all live at the mercy of Lord Victor Von Doom, you will be grateful he deigns to protect us, to save us. All hail Doom!
You know, when I heard that we had a special guest from Latveria on this episode, I'm not going to lie, Doombot, not my first guess. That was interesting, to say the least.
Did you actually think Doom would show up himself? That'd be pretty beneath him, honestly.
Sounds like you've been hanging out with Doombot A28 a little too much, Evan. Beneath him, really?
Look, some people say please and thank you to their smart speakers and devices, and others hang out with Doombots. I'm a comic book writer after all, it's research. Also, I'm just making sure they remember me once the robot takeover apocalypse starts. Especially since Doom's also Earth's newest Sorcerer Supreme.
You know what? That's fair, actually. And since we're on the topic of Doom, I got a chance to chat with writer Joe Kelly. Joe's got a new story with artist Ed McGuinness in next month's Amazing Spider-Man called 8 Deaths of Spider-Man, where Dr. Doom forces Peter into a team-up. I am so excited to welcome Joe Kelly to the show. Hi, Joe.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're going to have a good time because I think there's something very terrifying and compelling about the conceit that we're going to discuss. So let's kind of dive into it from a beginner's level. So before we actually dive into the 8 deaths of Spider-Man,
Dun, dun, dun.
what does your history with Spidey actually look like? Like, what was you as a fan or your previous work on the character? Like, tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, Spider-Man has always been my number one favorite. So I have a deep love. Like Peter's vibe I could relate to. I always felt like this nerdy kid who would get picked on and have all these problems and all this stuff. And if only I had some power, if only. But also I could fully relate to the guilt, like just Peter being driven by this deep sense of morality. And also he's a guy that messes up. And to see the guy who gets up no matter what and keeps going and keeps trying to do the right thing. It's always been really inspirational. I think it's why he's endured for this long.
So after the events of Marvel's Blood Hunt, Dr. Doom became the new Sorcerer Supreme, which is a wild sentence to say out loud. But how does this change in the status quo affect Spidey?
Well, there's a general way, which is sort of everybody in the Marvel universe, right, is now dealing with the fact that Doom is in charge. I mean, which is just terrifying on every level. Although, oddly, he's not terrible, right, at ruling. He's thought about it for a long time. And he's one of those guys that if you don't look under the hood, it sort of
great.
Looks, yeah, it's all great. Shiny green metallic, finish. And he does all right, but he is the Sorcerer Supreme, so now he's got a lot on his plate, and it hasn't directly affected the daily life of Peter Parker so much any more than it has anybody else that's paying attention to the news. Unfortunately, as Spider-Man, though, he has very much gotten the notice of Doom, and you really don't want to get Doom's attention on any day, but especially not as Sorcerer Supreme, and unfortunately, that is where the story kicks off. Basically, there's a task that needs to get done, and Doom does not want to do it. He has his reasons for not wanting to do it. One would say it's beneath him. He would say it's beneath him. The previous Sorcerer Supreme did not feel like it was a test. It was beneath him. But Doom does, and he needs somebody to do it. So he believes that Spider-Man will be right for the job. And when he first shows up, Spidey is not having it, like, at all. It's not until he sort of realizes the gravity of the situation that he says, okay, I've got to get involved now. And he agrees, and that's when he gets the full scope of what it is that Doom requires.
I am obsessed with the idea of Doom outsourcing his, like, delegating his annoying tasks. He's like, I'm not a micromanager. Like, I can walk. You just handle this. Like,
Doom
handle
is a
it.
big picture autocrat for sure. And he absolutely does not want to deal with day-to-day stuff, even when the day-to-day stuff is pretty significant.
Is Doom paying him? And does he have benefits?
Oh, sadly, Doom is more of a he's a charity. He's more of a charity organization, and he charitably lets you live. I think Doom would probably say that you're being paid with the honor of serving Doom.
It's for exposure.
Yeah, exposure. He would absolutely say that. He'd be the worst. He's absolutely the worst.
Oh, man. All right. So I am so curious to know more about Spider-Man's new suit. Like, did you already have an idea in your head about what it might look like? Is it sort of Ed's guidance on what the suit looked like? Where did it come from, and how did it come to be?
It was sort of a no-brainer that there would be kind of a cool mystic suit that would be involved. But very much it became let's throw this really challenging laundry list at Ed and see what he comes up with. We're like, okay,
Just the writer.
yeah, what do I know? And this design is probably one of those moments where we're like, okay, so Ed, it's going to be awesome. I know you love drawing Spider-Man, but this is a magical Spider-Man. And it can't be Sorcerer Supreme like Doctor Strange Spider-Man. It's got to be Doom magical Spider-Man. What do you got? And to his credit, Ed just goes off and goes, okay, that sounds cool, in his Boston accent that I can't replicate. And so he just started hammering at it. And Ed is so fun, and his grip on design, and you're always going to get a really cool, interesting look. The little bits that have come out so far look cool. When you see it in action, and when you see it with magic, it's really sick.
Can you tell us some of the things that the suit can do?
In a general overall sense, it gives him access to mystical knowledge. It's a cheat code, right? So like otherwise he would have had to have studied for who knows how long. So Doom's essentially cutting off sort of a sliver of the power of the Sorcerer Supreme and giving it to Spidey embodied in that suit. He can cast spells. He can do all that stuff. And naming spells in the Marvel style is probably one of the most fun things you can do. Wondrous webs of Wundagore. Like, you can't go wrong. It's so
no,
good.
You can't. That's amazing. I mean, I love magic and I love Spider-Man, and this sounds incredible. You have something in this book called these extra lives. How do they work?
So we know, leading up to this story, that whatever this task is that Doom does not want to deal with, and whenever Strange had to deal with this, he was in bad shape. The only way he can survive is because he has something called the Reeds of Ragador. And it's basically extra lives. But the Reeds literally mean you died. It's like they don't bring out the crash cart to pump your heart back up unless your heart actually stopped. So it's a bad thing if you see that crash cart. So bringing out the Reeds is not good. And the Reeds are very specific, and they're very limited. He's only given 8. So he's got to be really careful about how they get used.
Joe, is he going to die?
I think it is in the title.
But is he going to die for, like, what happens when we hit 0?
That would definitely not be a good thing. It would not be a good thing to run out of Reeds. I hope that does not happen. Hopefully he'll be judicious in using them.
What are you hoping that readers take away from this run?
I'm really hoping that people come away from this with a different take on how certainly Spider-Man looks at death, like death as a whole. A little bit of maybe food for thought about like the meaning of life and how we spend our time on this planet, for the amount of time we're given, and hope that, that all of our lives are precious. I feel like if you could walk out of this story and go, as hard as my life feels, my life is special, my life's important, that's what I'm hoping people are going to take away from it.
That is a lovely answer, and I think a perfect end to this interview because it's perfectly Spider-Man. It's, despite the hardship, giving yourself hope.
Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope people dig it. I hope they enjoy the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man.
As you'd assume from hearing our discussions about Doctor Doom in this episode, he's not exactly the warmest and fuzziest character in the Marvel Universe. That's not to say that the Latvian monarch isn't capable of being an inspiring figure. It's just that Doom typically motivates, and yes, those were air quotes, by making egotistical declarations, erupting into violent outbursts, and occasionally attempting to take over the world. In Marvel's Wastelanders fiction podcast series, Victor Von Doom chases after the Cosmic Cube, an immensely powerful object capable of warping reality. But when Doom finally achieves his cosmic power, something surprising happens. His mind is unexpectedly opened. The man inside the metal armor offers a softer side as he embraces an inner peace. After Doom acquires the Cosmic Cube, he has a conversation with his goddaughter, Valeria Richards. And yes, she is the daughter of the Fantastic Four's Reed Richards and Sue Storm. During his conversation with Valeria, Doom shares his fresh, philosophical, and yet kind of inspiring outlook on the nature of power.
Absolute power corrupts, Victor.
No. That is the familiar maxim, but no. Absolute power, my dear, enlightens. Corruption is the child of ego and desire.
Next week on the official Marvel podcast, we continue our Agatha All Along coverage as we delve into episode 7 with Jack Schaefer and star Sashir Zamata.
Episode 7, that's my favorite episode with Lilia's trial.
In the meantime, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you're listening to this episode and drop a comment or a review.
That's it for this week. This episode of the official Marvel podcast was hosted by Evan Narcis and myself, Preeti Chibber, with the performance by Ben Yeager-Thomas.
Our producer is Jasmine Estrada.
With help from Senior Manager of Audio Production and Development, Brad Barton, and Production Manager, Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Emma Munger.
Theme music by Ida Akbal.
Executive producers are Larissa Rosen and Jesse Berger.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.